Hey folks, today I want to talk about running a house from a generator if you have a power outage. Now, there are a lot of people who go out and buy generators during a power outage. If you have a generator and you don't have it wired into your house, then basically all you're able to do is run some extension cords, maybe plug in your refrigerator, plug in some lights or whatever. What I have set up here is I can run my entire house from a generator, and I want to show you exactly how that setup is. One important caveat: unless you're a licensed electrician, don't try to wire this yourself. You need to get a licensed electrician to do part of this. It's not terribly expensive, and let me tell you, having been through a over 1 week power outage with this system, it is well worth every penny to get an electrician. So here's my breaker box. I want to show you a couple things. First of all, right at the breaker box, I have the directions on exactly how to set up the generator and set up the breaker box so that if I don't happen to be home, my family would be able to do it. The next thing you'll notice here is, and it's on a little magnet, is there's an alarm here, and this is a street power alarm. Right now I have it off because the power's on. However, if the power went off, I would turn this street power alarm on, and then what happens is, when the power comes back on, the alarm will go off, and that's how I'll know the power is back on. So this, right now I have it off. If the power goes off, I hook up the generator, I'll turn this on, and once the power comes back on the street, that'll let me know. Now, in the breaker box itself, what happens is the electrician wired in a generator switch for me, which is right here. But you'll notice I can't flip the switch because of this little metal piece here. This is the main breaker for the house. And the way this is set up is, in order to flip on my generator switch, the main breaker has to be switched off. And this is according to electrical codes. You don't want to plug a generator into the house when your main breaker switch is on, because what you might do is energize the lines and kill the poor utility guy who's trying to fix the power outage. So this particular switch here makes it impossible to turn on the generator at the breaker without having the main power shut off first. Next, we're going to go out. I'll show you the generator and some of the setup outside. Hey folks, I'm out in the garage right now, and that's actually, I keep my generator in the garage to keep it out of the elements. What I have here, it's not a particularly big generator. It's a 5,600 watt generator. Bought it about 8 years ago for around $600 at a wholesale club. I've priced them recently, and they haven't gone up a whole lot from that. So it's fairly inexpensive to get a generator. Now, in my particular case, this small generator will run my entire house because my entire house is gas appliances. We have a gas dryer, gas heat, gas hot water, gas stove, and an oven. So this little generator will actually run my entire house, with the one exception of the central air, which I don't worry too much about anyway. So this particular generator holds 7 gallons of fuel, and what you want to make sure is, number one, that you treat the fuel with a fuel stabilizer. I use Stabil. I think there's a couple of others out there. And also you want to rotate the fuel in the generator. You don't want to leave fuel in here for a couple years. So what I do is every September I take all of my fuel, including my fuel in the generator, I dump it in the truck, and then I put new treated fuel in for the year. And with the Stabil, it's fine for a year in this particular environment sitting in the garage. Now, what I also have right next to the generator is, when the electrician wired in the generator for me, he made me this big long cable. I keep it right here with the generator, and then you'll also see I have another set of directions for setting the whole generator up. So if there's a power outage and I don't happen to be around, my family would be able to still just follow the directions and set up the generator and run it. It's fairly simple. Now, if we come on over here, let me show you a couple of other little components of this. Okay, the electrician set up this box. This is where the generator actually plugs into the house, and then this in turn goes down to the breaker box down in the basement that I showed you before. So it's an outdoor plug, but it's here in the garage, so it's fine. It's nice and out of the element. And then there's one other piece, which is, I would say, is optional, but to me it was fairly important. I got this at Granger's, and what this is this is an exhaust port like you would see at a gas station on the door where they run the exhaust line out. And what this enables me to do is I can run the cable, because obviously the generator is going to be outside while it's running, and I can run the cable right in here and plug it in. And this alleviates a security concern that I had during the last big power outage. I had to run the generator cable through the door and obviously couldn't close and lock the door. So I wasn't very happy with that setup, so I went and got this exhaust port. Now I can completely lock this door and just run the cable right through here. And what I fitted it with is on the other side of the door you'll see that I have a little plug. It's just made of styrofoam and some duct tape and a little bit of 550 cord, good old prepper 550 cord. And this just keeps the draft out of it, is all that really does. So that's kind of all of the components of it. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to set it all up, then we'll come back and we're going to test it all out and see if we can run my house from the generator. Be right back. Outside now, I'll try to talk a little bit louder. I dragged out the generator, I ran the cable in, ran it through the door, and plugged it into the house. I don't have it plugged into the generator yet until I start it. Now remember, downstairs my generator switch isn't flipped yet. So when I plug this in, it's not going to run the house yet. I still have to go down and flip the switch on my breaker box. Now one thing, when you get an electrician out, they'll be able to help you determine what size generator to get. You know, as it turns out, like I said, since I'm all gas appliances, I'm able to use this fairly small generator to run my entire house. Your situation may be different, and if you don't know how to figure out the loads yourself, when an electrician comes out, you can just have him suggest what size generator to use. A couple of other important safety considerations here. Number one, make sure that your exhaust is not blowing towards the building, and you want to make sure that it's out in an area where you're not going to get carbon monoxide or exhaust intake into your house somehow. So this is outside. I'm going to run it outside, and it's a fairly safe area. Now another thing, I just happen to have this really good area that's got some overhang from the roof. So if you see through most weather, because of that roof overhang, my generator stays perfectly dry even if it's raining. As a matter of fact, if you look down at the pavers, it was just raining a little while ago and you see it's all wet out here. It's perfectly dry in here. So this is a perfect spot for my generator. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start it up, plug in the cable, and then we'll go downstairs and flip the breaker and see if we can run the house from the generator. So here goes nothing. Switch is on. Breaker box, the generator's running upstairs, I've got everything plugged in. Now we're going to test it out and see whether we can run the house. Now as you'll notice in this room, we've got the lights on right now because there actually is street power. But what's going to happen, I'm flipping the main breaker, all the lights went off. Now I'm able to push this switch up and flip on. This is generator power. So now my house is being run from the generator. Now the only thing, depending on the size of the generator, there may be certain breakers that you have to flip off, and probably in a perfect world I should have flipped them all off and then turned them on one at a time. But actually we had turned everything off from upstairs before we started this video. But when your electrician comes, he'll tell you the exact procedure, and then what you do is just print up what the procedure is, what you turn off, what you turn on, what you plug in, what order you do it in. Make yourself some instructions so that if you don't happen to be there, or if you forgot, in an emergency you're under a little bit of stress, you've got the step-by-step instructions. And now what would happen is I would turn on my street power alarm and once the power outage was over, I'd hear that when street power came back on, this thing would start sounding. I'd hear it upstairs, and then I would come back in. I'll flip off my generator. This switch flips down. And now, flip my main power back on. Now, the last thing I would like to say is, as a result of doing this video, I just screwed up all the clocks in the house, and my wife is going to give me a whole bunch of crap about this. So please like this video because it came at a great cost. Thank you very much for watching.